Vincent van Gogh grew up with the heart that always seemed far too large for his thin, restless body, beating with emotions so intense, layered, and unfiltered that they spilled into every quiet thought, every uncomfortable pause, and every lonely moment where he struggled to understand both the confusing world around him and the endless storm turning inside his own mind. He was born in 1853 in the small Dutch village of Zundert, a quiet place of flat farmland, narrow dirt roads, modest homes, and enormous open skies that stretched endlessly above him, offering both calm beauty and deep isolation to a boy who felt everything far more deeply than he could ever explain with words. The land around him was steady, predictable, and shaped by routine and tradition, but Vincent himself was never steady at all, and from an early age he was sensitive, serious, inward-looking, and emotionally alert. The kind of child who experienced happiness like warm sunlight flooding his chest and sadness like a heavy winter coat he could never fully take off. While other children laughed easily, played loudly, and moved through life without hesitation or doubt, Vincent often stood just slightly apart, watching closely, thinking carefully, and quietly collecting questions that refused to settle into simple answers or comfortable conclusions. He loved nature with a devotion that was quiet but deeply powerful, wandering through fields and along muddy paths, studying twisted roots, rough tree bark, bending wheat, drifting clouds, and restless birds as if they were alive and constantly trying to tell him something important just beneath the surface. He noticed how light slid across the land from early morning to fading evening, how color shifted with weather, season, and emotion, and how even the smallest flower seemed filled with personality, feeling, and meaning if one simply looked long enough. These moments in nature felt safe to Vincent because they did not judge him, rush him, or demand explanations, and they allowed him to feel deeply without being told that he was too sensitive, too strange, or too much. School, however, felt like a constant and exhausting struggle because rules felt rigid, expectations felt confusing, and Vincent found it nearly impossible to fit inside systems that demanded calm obedience while his thoughts raced and his emotions burned without warning. As he grew older, Vincent searched desperately for purpose and direction, moving from one path to another, believing that somewhere out there existed a role that might finally give his life structure, meaning, and a sense of inner peace. He worked as an art dealer surrounded every day by paintings and beauty, yet painfully uncertain of his own place in the art world, quietly wondering why images spoke so clearly to his heart while people so often felt distant and unreachable. He tried teaching, preaching, and religious work as well, driven by a sincere desire to help others, reduce suffering, and live a life filled with compassion, service, and moral purpose. But Vincent's honesty was intense, his emotions raw, and his expectations deeply sincere, and instead of pulling people closer, his passion often overwhelmed them, leaving him misunderstood, disappointed, and increasingly alone. Loneliness slowly became a familiar companion, following him from town to town, and job to job like a shadow that never fully disappeared, no matter how far he tried to walk ahead of it. Through every failure, rejection, and emotional collapse, one person remained constant: his younger brother Theo, who believed in Vincent with a steady, patient faith that never faded, even during moments when Vincent himself lost belief entirely. Theo's letters were filled with encouragement, reassurance, and understanding, reminding Vincent again and again that someone truly saw him, listened to him, and cared deeply about his survival. Those letters became lifelines, carrying hope across distance and despair, offering just enough strength to keep Vincent moving forward when everything else in his life seemed to fall apart. Vincent did not become an artist early in life, but turned seriously to painting in his late 20s, not because it felt easy, joyful, or promising, but because it felt absolutely necessary, like breathing when the air begins to disappear. Art became the only language strong enough to carry the weight of his thoughts and emotions when spoken words failed him over and over again. At first, his paintings were dark, heavy, and earthy, filled with farmers bent under endless labor, workers worn down by long days, and faces shaped by hardship, resilience, and quiet dignity. He painted rough hands, tired eyes, and ordinary lives with deep respect, choosing emotional truth as he felt it rather than beauty as society expected it to appear. When Vincent moved to France, everything changed at once, as if the world itself had been repainted overnight with brighter light and sharper edges. The sunlight grew stronger and more alive, flooding his vision and pushing him toward colors he had never dared to use before. Yellows burned like captured sunlight, blues twisted into restless motion, and greens pulsed with energy as his brushstrokes grew thicker, faster, and more urgent. His paintings no longer sat quietly on the canvas, but seemed to move, vibrate, and breathe with emotion. He painted fields that appeared alive, olive trees that twisted like living muscles, and sunflowers that blazed with warmth, hope, and fragile strength. Vincent did not paint what the world looked like to others. He painted what it felt like to exist inside his own mind. Painting brought moments of joy so intense they felt almost electric, moments where everything briefly made sense and the noise inside his head finally softened. But peace never stayed for long, and his emotions rose and crashed like waves, swinging violently between unstoppable energy and crushing despair. He painted obsessively, sometimes finishing several paintings in a single day, driven by the fear that time was slipping away, and that he might lose his chance to say what he needed to say. Money was scarce, recognition nearly non-existent, and during his lifetime Vincent sold only one painting, a painful reality that slowly chipped away at his confidence. Still, he continued painting, believing sometimes stubbornly, sometimes desperately that his work mattered, even when belief itself began to hurt. In Arles, Vincent dreamed of building a community of artists, a place of shared creativity, mutual understanding, and emotional support. But relationships proved difficult, misunderstandings grew quickly, arguments flared, and his fragile mental health began to fracture under pressure. Even in hospitals and quiet rooms meant to contain his suffering, Vincent continued to paint, filling canvases with gardens bursting with life, trees reaching upward, and skies swirling with restless emotion. In one of his darkest moments, he painted the starry night, a sky alive with motion and burning stars, capturing the chaos and beauty of his inner world with breathtaking honesty. The painting was not calm, not peaceful, and not controlled, but alive with feeling, tension, and movement. Vincent continued painting until his final days, pouring everything he had into color, motion, and emotion, even as he doubted his worth and quietly believed his life had been a failure. In 1890, exhausted and overwhelmed, Vincent van Gogh died at the age of 37, and the world barely noticed his passing. Time, however, noticed. Slowly, people began to see what Vincent had been trying to show all along. They felt emotion move across the canvas. They felt life reach out through color and motion. Today, Vincent van Gogh is celebrated as one of the most influential artists in history. His paintings hang in museums around the world, drawing crowds who stand silently, deeply moved by something powerful they cannot always explain. Artists study his work and learn that rules can be broken. Students learn that emotion can be strength. Kids see his swirling skies and blazing sunflowers and realize that feeling deeply can be a gift rather than a weakness. Vincent's life teaches us that being different is not failure, that sensitivity is not weakness, and that creativity can become a lifeline when everything else feels uncertain. He reminds us that success is not always measured in money or praise, but sometimes in honesty, persistence, and the courage to keep creating despite pain. Every time someone paints through sadness, draws through doubt, or creates through struggle, Vincent van Gogh's spirit quietly lives on. And if you listen carefully, his story still whispers across time, color, and canvas. Feel deeply, see boldly, create honestly. Even a restless heart can fill the world with light.